Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the Let's Talk Melbourne podcast, where we are having a conversation with Manish Mathur. Manish is a producer and a host of a very popular Bollywood podcast called Bollywood Drafts, where he assembles one of the finest panelists from across the globe, and they do rankings based on the category for all Bollywood movies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Manish is a lovely guy, and I was really happy he could come on the pod. And this is a really fun conversation. Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the Let's Talk Melbourne podcast. I'm your host, Vikas, and I'm really excited to have a fellow podcaster and a fellow, I want to say he's like my spiritual brother, although I've never met him in my entire life. But we both love Yash Chopra and Christopher Nolan. So to me, that's by default means we are related, Manish. So apologies in advance for imposing that on you. Can I please request you to introduce yourself if you don't mind, if that's okay?
Oh, of course. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm Manish Mathur. I'm a podcaster. I host a podcast called Bollywood Drafts, where I bring together panels of guests to rank movies based on a category, actors, directors, genres. There's some vetoes and some strategic gameplay, so it's a lot of fun to, it's an excuse to talk about movies and debate and have some fun. So that's available on all major podcast platforms.
I will share all of the links for Manish's podcast, The Bollywood Drafts, in the episode titles and details for Let's Talk Melbourne. And just for the listeners and viewers who know, Manish is based in New York and I'm in Melbourne. And we both sort of connected because of podcasting in some ways or the other. And we will get into, I've lost so many questions, Manish, on your podcast. I have so many bones to pick with you about at least two episodes. So we'll get into all of that. But before we get into that, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about yourself, what you do. I mean, you sort of said you do a podcast. What do you do outside of podcasting, one? And what prompted you to start a podcast to begin with? I'm really curious to know that.
Well, in my day job, I work in marketing, and I do, content marketing, content development. I also am a writer. I like to write about film and television, and I have a newsletter on LinkedIn called Manish's Media Minute, where I just talk about stuff that's going on in pop culture or in media or marketing and kind of give my opinion on that. So that's what I do, outside of, recording podcasts. The reason why I wanted to start podcasting was essentially it was a way for me to make new friends and to get to know people that I follow and read or admire or enjoy, or whose timelines and feeds I enjoy. And so that was sort of it. And I love to talk about movies, but I don't really have a lot of people in my offline life that like movies to the degree that I do. I have a few cousins, a few friends, but for the most part, a lot of my friends, like movies casually, but don't get into it as much as I do. So this was a way for me to really exercise that muscle and talk to people about stuff. And yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it's definitely a challenging process, just to kind of maintain a podcast and schedule and do everything. I mean, I'm sure being a host yourself. So it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy doing it, and I'm glad to meet so many fellow podcasters as well. Because it seems like if you podcast, you understand sort of the unique process that it is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it's wonderful. I really enjoy your podcast, I have to
Oh,
admit.
thank
I
you.
haven't listened to your latest Abbas Mastan episode, but I have to block in. It's my gym time. That's when I will listen and do the gym time. So I'll
Yeah.
do it. I'll eventually get into it at some point. But I'm still recovering from the Yash Chopra episode. I'm so scarred. I'll get into that in more detail. Um, thank you for sharing that. But I just wanted to, what were when you were growing up? What were the kind of movies that you were watching, Manish? Whether it's regardless of whether it's Bollywood or Hollywood or any kind of, do you remember as a child growing up, movies that really enamored you and sort of you were like, wow, this is something that I enjoy consuming as an art form?
Yeah, I always say that the movie that really got me interested in movies is Devdas, the 2002 one with Shah Rukh Khan and Aishwarya Rai and Madhuri Dixit. I think that was the first time that I really understood what cameras can do and what editing can do, and that is such an outsized film, right? You know, it's long, it's epic, it has this incredible design, it's so emotionally wrought and so intense that that was the one movie that I really claim as the one that really got me into understanding movies as an art form. And we watch movies a lot in our family. You know, we always watch stuff on the weekends. You know, I grew up on Bollywood movies. That's how I learned Hindi. And outside of Bollywood, I mean, I was a Disney kid. I watched every, you know, Disney movie, Pixar movie. So those were like the main ones. But yeah, Devdas is pretty much the one. And then, you know, on the Hollywood side, you know, when I got into Hitchcock, you know, in high school and college, he was another filmmaker that really taught me about sort of the art of movie making, and I really credit those two filmmakers, you know, Sanjay Leela Bhansali and Alfred Hitchcock, on teaching me about movies because I think they have such pronounced styles that you know you really can notice what you know what a director does, what an editor does, what a cinematographer does through their work, and then you know, it was sort of in college and after that I really started to branch out and watch different types of movies from all over the world, or, you know, go back to older Bollywood films or revisit ones that we watched as a kid. You know, of course, movies like Hum Aapke Hai Kaun and DDLJ and Kuch Kuch Hota Hai and K through G, you know, those were major movies for us. Maine Pyar Kiya as well. You know, Mr. India, Meri Jang. But it wasn't really until college that I went back to watch those movies to appreciate them as, you know,
Yeah.
pieces of cinema. There used to always just be like, yeah, the movies that are on that we have the videotapes for. But it really has been in the last, you know, 10, 15 years of my life that I've been actually going back to those old classics and looking at them anew. Yeah, so that's kind of my background in general.
Awesome. And can I ask, when you watched Devdas, you were in America at the time? Were you growing up?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was in America. I remember exactly where I was sitting, what theater. Well, because back then, I mean, that was 2002. So, you know, we didn't have Indian movies playing in multiple theaters. There was
Yeah.
one or two in where I grew up. I mean, I didn't grow up in New York, so I imagine, you know, in New York there was probably more. In California there were probably more. But, you know, where I grew up in the state of Maryland, which is very close to our nation's capital. So there was two theaters that we remember, one in Virginia, one in Maryland. So, and those two theaters had two screens each. So, you know, Devdas was the movie that was playing for that month in that one theater. So everyone saw it in that same place. And so, yeah, that was definitely in America. I didn't really see Indian movies in India until I mean, I mean, I guess I must have. You know, we went to India so much in the '90s, but I do remember seeing like LOC Cargill there.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I know, and seeing movies like Babel, and I saw Doom 2 in India. So I've been to movies in India. I mean, I haven't been to India in so long, but
Okay.
um, you know, now like there are Indian movies playing, you know,
Everywhere.
in
Yeah.
everywhere
Yeah.
in multiplexes here in America. You know, I think especially Telugu movies play the most, and then Hindi movies, and then probably Tamil movies. So, and that's just because there's such a demand for South Indian movies, I think, across all the Indian diaspora. So now it's much easier, and you know, and living in New York, of course, it's easier as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, so but it was hard, you know, 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, no, interesting you said that because I remember one of my favorite all-time movie critics, the late great Richard Corrales of Time Magazine, put Devdas as one of the top 10 movies of the decade. And
Yeah,
so it was interesting to me how America reacted to Devdas versus say how people in India reacted to Devdas, and they appreciated the unabashed, unapologetic excess opulence of movie
yeah,
making and heightened emotions in the best sense of the word. So, and for me, the movie is a mess, but it's a glorious mess, right? It's an amazing mess that I enjoy. So, now interesting you say that. And Hitchcock, of course, is I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. I got into Hitchcock because my mother was a Hitchcock fan. I'm just interested
yeah, yeah.
if you were to pick three Hitchcock movies that you love, or even two that comes to your mind?
Oh, I mean, I think
There's so
he's
many. I
had
know it's a tough
like
one, but there's so many.
over a dozen masterpieces. When I was writing for Talk Film Society, I wrote an entire column over a span of 2 years, covering every single movie that was available that he had made, from the silent films in the 20s through his last films in the 70s. And so for me, I feel like I think there are three movies that any new person should watch if they want to get into Hitchcock or if they wanted to get into film in general. And I think Vertigo is probably
Absolutely. Yeah.
the best one to watch. Rear Window, Notorious. I would also suggest Psycho, of course, Shadow of a Doubt, 39 Steps.
Yeah.
Um, Frenzy. I mean, there countless. But I would say if you want to really get an intro, I would say Rear Window is the one to watch as an intro because it's funny, it's romantic, it has a good mystery. It's to me that movie is more about cinema and like watching movies and making movies than it is about a
Voyeurism.
murder
Yeah.
mystery.
Yeah.
It's on a metaphorical sense. So that'd be the one. Like that's the first Hitchcock movie that I showed my boyfriend. Um, but yeah, I would say Vertigo for me is. I have a Vertigo poster, in my apartment.
Do you?
It's one of my favorite.
So you're a
Yeah,
legit
yeah.
fan. Okay.
I can show it to you. I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but I mean, excuse the
Oh,
mess,
I
but it's
can
up there
see
on the
it. Oh,
wall.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's I've had that for so long. So yeah, I love Vertigo. And Hitchcock, I'll always have a soft spot for him because he was so influential for me in just like learning how to analyze movies. I've read books about him. I've seen documentaries. Every Blu-ray that I've had of his, I watched all the special features. So, yeah, he's one of my top guys.
Awesome. I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. I've
Yeah.
so much love for all his cinemas, but I have a soft spot for Foreign Correspondent. And
Oh
as
yeah,
in
yeah,
Rare Window, if not for anything, just watch for Grace Kelly. She looks incredible in the movie,
yeah,
and his visual grammar is impeccable. I mean, Nolan is like him in the sense that he believes in suspense and perhaps that excess and presenting movie stars like movie stars, but
yeah.
Hitchcock had such tight grip over his direction, his camera placements, phenomenal. All right.
I mean,
Now,
any movie today, you can trace back to Hitchcock in
well,
some way.
absolutely.
Actually, I was watching this one show from like the 2010s that was a very standard suspense show. It's called Revenge. With Emily Van Camp, and it's like a soap opera. But I was watching this one episode, and like there was a scene that I was like, this is directly inspired by Hitchcock. Like it was a scene straight out of Notorious. And I was like, yeah, like Hitchcock's influence is everywhere, even if people
Yeah.
aren't conscious of it. Especially if you're making movies in the suspense or thriller or horror genre.
You need to send me the piece you wrote on him or direct me to where I can find it. I would love to
Oh,
read.
absolutely, I will. I
Yeah.
will.
Did you know they made a Hindi remake of Revenge TV show with Ravina Tandon? It was so
Oh,
good.
really?
Yeah, like it,
I
it
gotta
was
watch
awesome.
that. I love
It's like
Ravina.
it's really bad, but it's kind of unintentionally funny
Yeah.
bad. Depends on
Sure,
one's
sure.
threshold of consumption of that.
I mean, the American version, like,
Wasn't great
it's
either, but it was
yeah,
like
it's interesting. Like, it's a good kind of like soap opera, murder
campy.
mystery,
Yeah.
thriller type, where it's like it's not going to be praised for, its contribution to the art of television, but it's got good twists, it's got, good actors, good settings, so it's all you can ask for sometimes.
Cool. All right, now let's jump into your podcast, Bollywood Drafts.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just curious to know, because you've got a very interesting and varied panelists from the episodes that you've dropped so far. How do you curate them? How do you even come to one of my biggest fears, say if I was in your position, not that I am, but is to get someone who doesn't get it and just goes off on a different tangent. You know what I mean? How do you
Yeah.
how do you sort of, in long story short, how do you choose which panelists? Firstly, how do you curate your panelists, and then how do you then choose which one has to be on which episode? If you have a process, or
I don't have a process for that. I follow a lot of amazing writers and content creators and, social media personalities or just whoever. And, if I find that you're saying smart things about movies on my timeline, or if I like something you say, I'll be like, hey, you know what? Come be on my podcast. I'm always looking for guests just because I can't ask the same, five,
yeah,
eight
yeah,
people to be on every episode. I mean, I would love to just have my friends on over and over, but the podcast takes a lot of time and effort, I guess. So I'm just like, anyone that I find interesting. I mean, I'm trying to branch out more to people that I don't know personally, and try to go more towards like film critics or, people that have made careers out of talking about films. Now that the podcast is somewhat established and it's been on for a while, and I feel more confident as a host. My process for who wants to go on which episode, I mean, I ask people, I always have a running list of potential categories for each episode. What I did for season two is I sent out like a long email to people just being like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. If you want to sign up for something, I'm happy to have you. Or if you have any categories you have in mind, let me know whatever you're passionate about. Some people are like, you know what, I'm really passionate about this actor. And I'm like, okay, well, when that episode comes up or when I want to do that, I'll give you a call. And, I do. So it's just kind of like, I trust that people will, you know, be on an episode that they're passionate about or be on something that they feel they can contribute to. I mean, I've had people tell me no, or people that say, "Oh, this category isn't for me, but keep me in mind." And I have a spreadsheet of everyone that I'm trying to get on the podcast and all these, potential categories and potential episodes. So I try to keep track of all of that, but I think that like eventually my goal is for people to come to me and be like, okay, I really like this idea. I have this person in mind. Can we do it? Right now, because it's still so new, I'm being a little bit more like, hey, I have this idea for a podcast and I want you to be on it. So it really just, there's no method to the madness. It's just kind of like I'm still early stages. I don't have a huge following on Twitter, so it's a lot of me reaching out to people that don't follow me back and who sometimes they respond back, sometimes they don't, sometimes they'll respond back 3 months later. So it's a rolling process, and I'm always happy to meet new people, happy to introduce people to each other. Um, as long as we're all passionate about movies and are polite, respectful, and authentic, then I'm happy to have them. I really have no criteria about number of followers or number of listeners or anything like that.
so you just go on judgment and instinct based on
My
on
own
their on
instinct,
their
and
takes on cinema in general.
yeah, I mean, thankfully there hasn't been anyone that I've crossed off the list after an
Now, I was
episode. I
just
mean,
thinking,
maybe
say, if you
that
had someone who came and defended Kangana Ranaut as an example and said, she
I
is the
yeah, I
best actor
mean,
in the history of cinema, and how do you then?
she's only come up on one episode, and that was when I was ranking like movies that had won Filmfare Best Actress in the
Yeah.
21st century, and of course she won for Queen, and she came up, but that panel was like, hey, she's a terrible person and she has to cause a lot of harm, but this movie came out before she was publicly so
Just crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, we can't deny that it's a great
No, fair.
movie. And I don't ever want to, I think that, like, for me, if a movie comes out before someone, kind of goes off the deep end or commits any crimes or anything, it's kind of fair game to me. I'm not gonna, you know, deny that something is a great movie just because 10 years later this person became a right wing insane person.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like
Yeah,
it's sort of like I would still watch Shakespeare in Love. Like it's not a great movie, but I enjoy it, But they're
yeah,
mutually exclusive things. But yes, this their case you do it on a case, but at least I do it on a case by
yeah,
case.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
You
yeah,
can't really have a one size fit
yeah.
all. Now talking about your podcast and sort of deep diving into it further, I've listened to all of most of them at least.
Oh
The
wow.
Madhuri Dixit episode in particular sort of upsetted me personally because I my rankings were so different, but I was okay with it.
Sure.
Like I was like, fine, people have different takes and so on and so forth. But the thing that really, really got me was the Yash Chopra Part 2 episode. I instantly messaged you. I remember. I
Yeah.
literally messaged you the minute the number one movie was. I didn't even bother to finish the whole episode. Like I literally
Yeah,
messaged
yeah,
you. I won't reveal the number one because if people of Yash Chopra fans listening or watching, I would recommend you go and check it out and DM me your
yeah,
thoughts if you
yeah.
wanted to. It's quite an interesting one. So I won't reveal what the rankings
Yeah,
yet.
yeah. No, I mean
But I
it's a long
was
episode, but definitely
Oh, it's
worth
definite. I mean,
listening.
if you're a Yash Chopra fan, I'm sure
Yeah,
anyone who cares about Chopra's legacy or movies will devote that time. It's one of those things.
yeah.
But the thing that really surprised me was my own reaction to it. I didn't expect to have that kind of reaction because at the end of the day, I was like, and after a day, I was like, why did you react like this? I was just thinking that. I'm like, I was really upset, and I told you that I felt like I needed to do a teleporting of some sort and come into the
Right, right.
podcast and sort of tell everyone and just smack everyone and say, you guys have it all wrong. Okay, this is not
Yeah.
acceptable. But obviously, that's an overreaction on my part. I get that. But
No, I mean it's yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
let it go.
I mean, that's the fun of the podcast, is to, have that kind of reaction. So I adapted this podcast. It's based off an American podcast called Screen Drafts that I've been listening to all year long, and I kind of took the idea of doing these, rankings and kind of tweaked it a little bit. And it just I think that when it comes to ranking stuff, people get really passionate about their own picks. I mean, on that episode, we had someone like really, um, really, protecting Chandani. We had people protecting Mathur. I did a listeners veto where I took a poll on Google Forms, and Virzada won that poll, and that got saved from being played lower on the list and got put higher on the list. And people really have their passion picks, and when you are listening to an episode like this, and I, I think it's only natural to have a strong reaction to it. I mean, the thing is, as the host, I'm the one that gets the DMs and the mentions, being like, "How come this happened and that didn't happen?" And I'm like, "Look, I'm
You're
just the
just the
host.
host, yeah. You have no
I don't
say.
have any control. Like, I did do the listeners veto, which I know was a controversial thing on that episode because, the listeners chose Virzada to save for the top five. But
Even if you get your Australians to
that
listen to your podcast, they will not vote for Virzar. On behalf of the Australians community, I can
yeah.
guarantee
Wait,
that.
why is that? Are they not? It's not popular there.
No, I just think they're more. Not that I claim to know every Indian Australian in or every any
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
Australians who watch it, but for majority, I think uh, it's a very tricky one because it hasn't aged necessarily well. A lot of
Oh,
those
I think
things.
it's aged. I think it's aged remarkably well. I feel like it's really, it feels almost radical to have such a
Yeah, yeah, no, obviously, I think in
empathetic
today's time,
Movie about Pakistan
yeah, yeah.
now, where it's like if this movie made now, like I think Shah Rukh Khan and Preeti Zinta's like pictures will be burned in the streets, with the way Hindu people can be in India. No offense to them, but a lot of them are very
Oh no, no. I mean,
Islam,
in
Islamophobic.
geopolitics, yes, I agree with you. From a geopolitics level, it's impossible to make a movie like Veer Sara. Imagine, forget even making a movie where in India, an Indian Hindu is falling in love with an Indian Muslim itself is going to be
I
God
mean,
knows,
yeah, exactly.
and then
It's
Pakistan would be a whole
controversial.
different other thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, sorry, what was I
But
talking
I
about?
mean,
No,
I think that that's just that's the fun of the podcast is to have these kinds of reactions. And, like, I mean, the thing is that, like, especially with Yash Chopra or Madhuri Dixit or Shah Rukh Khan or, Amitabh Bachchan, we all come to these categories or to these themes with our own, backgrounds and passions and experiences. So, for me, like I fell in love with Virzada when I was in my late 20s. I didn't really understand the movie until I was much older. And I've only fallen more in love with it since in the last 10 years of my life, which is crazy to think about. Like, it wasn't a movie that I watched when I was in high school. I mean, I watched it once, but it wasn't until much later that I really it spoke to me on that level. But like, Leha on that podcast, and I think Yamini as well, like they did not really connect with Virzada as much. And but I didn't really connect with Galapatar as much as they did, but that was the movie that they were very passionate
yeah,
about
yeah.
putting to the
Ultimately,
top of
yeah.
the list. So I think it's just really interesting in that way because especially we're all, I have cinephiles, I have people that are very passionate about movies on the podcast, and you know, having people with such strong personalities, to do something like rank movies over their favorite director, it's only going to cause, not tension, but just a lot of like
But good
heated
tension. That's good
conversation.
tension. It's
Yeah,
good
yeah,
fun.
it's good tension, and like,
Good fun.
I mean, I know that, I know I make fun that like, oh, people are DMing me or people are, replying to me how mad they are about, how the list turns out. But to me, that's just like, you know what? That means you're listening and it's something that's exciting to you and it's speaking to you and it's causing a reaction. And that's all I ask for. I mean, it's not, I welcome that kind of engagement because to me, it's like, well, now I know this podcast is effective and that it's really inspiring people to think about their own lists and to engage with it in that way. That's all I really ask for. So,
No, I think it's correct. And
because you're always welcome to DM me your anger at, at how these
look, at the
podcasts turn out.
no, no, look, at the end of the day, we all engage with art differently for different reasons because we're all different people, right? We all are
Right,
different
right.
people, and that's how any kind of art is a personal reaction. You
Yeah.
can be objective to a point, but ultimately your subjectivity kicks in, right? It's just how it
Yeah.
is. But coming back to your original question for Virzar, it's not that popular. I think there's a lot more love for, say, a Chandni or a Kabhi Kabhi or a Silsila, and then than say Veer. And I also think that's got to probably do with the kind of age bandwidth. I think, like Gen Zs and probably people who grew up in 2000s would have responded to Veer a lot more, whereas
Yeah.
someone who is the mid 30s
I
might have.
I will say that the movie, I think the movie won the poll because it happened to I happened to release the poll when Virzada was back in theaters in
Yeah,
India.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that it was on top of mind. Plus, I think I follow and am followed by a lot of Shah Rukh Khan fans. And Shah Rukh Khan fans are really passionate,
Oh,
and they're really, I don't have any problems with them being like rude or anything to anyone else, but I think that they're really passionate about Shah Rukh Khan movies. Especially, I think Veer as a character is one that has really captured the attention and affection for a lot of people because he's so pure-hearted. So yeah, I think it was just a really good timing for Virzada.
no, no.
I personally voted for Lamhe on that poll. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that I voted on my own poll. I voted for Lamhe because
I
I
voted for
thought that
Lamhe
should
on
have.
that poll. I voted for Lamhe on that
Yeah,
poll. I
yeah.
mean,
But also,
how
I knew just knowing the panel, I knew that Lamhe would not be low on the ranking. I figured Lamhe would be on the top five. So
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely, I definitely want to do that listener's veto again, later on. I think it's a good
It's a
little
good mix
twist.
because you sort of also want to, as a podcaster, you also want to know your audience, what they like and what they listen to, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
one of the
yeah,
fundamental things is you're doing this for people who listen to your podcast. I mean, that's also the main thing. I
yeah,
do.
yeah,
I mean, for me, Virzara, I resonated because I'm a Sindhi Hindu, but my grandparents, great grandparents migrated from Pakistan to India after
yeah,
partition. So I got the whole Zora Saigal characters, emotions for that. But my favorite thing about Virzara was Amitabh and Hema Malini and the relationship between them, and the point which I think
yeah,
came on your podcast as well, that Chopra has a knack of showing romance and intimacy of people of a certain vintage, which is pretty much dead now, unless say like that Nina Gupta movie, Badai Do. That was probably the only
yeah,
movie
yeah.
that we saw that sort of endearing chemistry between the two. Okay. So now one thing before we jump into the game is that I have a request. You should do when you can and a draft episode for Saroj Khan songs. I think that would be a very interesting and probably the most difficult one because she's got such bangers, as you said.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
Deepika
not me.
Padukone,
Deepika
right?
Padukone coined that
Yeah.
phrase.
Yeah, I love
But
that. I love that.
it's funny. A lot of people have come to me being like, "I want to rank soundtracks. I want to rank dance numbers." I kind of have this hot take that I feel like there's so much focus on Bollywood music, and sometimes I feel that eclipses Bollywood movies as movies and like talking about like songs like within their placement of in within the movie. I think that is something that really is something that I think gets lost a lot. And that, we
I
separate the songs so much that so I want to keep my podcast to be talking about movies. Now, I can be that, yeah, we can rank movies that feature Saroj Khan dance number or that she's choreographed, but I want the focus to be on the movies themselves as a whole. You know what I mean? I just like, there's like, there, every year there's, the soundtrack, bracket, or there's a lot of focus on, well, this lyricist or this composer, and I appreciate all that, but I don't, music doesn't speak to me, and dance for sure doesn't. I mean, I don't know anything about dance, but I think at some point maybe it's an option or something. But I feel like for now I would like to keep the focus on ranking movies, but that doesn't
No,
mean
absolutely.
that
It's your
can't
podcast. You can do whatever
change.
you want to,
Yeah,
right? So it's
yeah, yeah,
completely there. But this is just my 2 cents worth. I think, and this is probably because I grew up in a family, and my family grew up. The whole concept of Hindi cinema came from Nautanki, right? It's from the dance
yeah,
is an art form. It's integral to our visual, our movie language. I mean, yes, the post Ramagopal Verma and Zoya Akhtar sort of went on, and Anurag Kashyap went on. The music is in the background, and it's focused on character and all, and that's fantastic. I love all of them. Don't get me wrong. But Hindi cinema is known for its dance form. We are essentially a Nautanki society. We love that dancing, and it's true from Mughal Azam. It's a history and a legacy, and I feel that
yeah.
music I couldn't care less about. I agree with you because soundtracks and lyricists, that's just again, we don't even make great music anymore. That's just my
Well,
don't
yeah.
don't send me hate emails that I said that. I love
No, I
if you
totally
are
agree. I mean,
listening to my listeners, good for you.
yeah.
I think he's okay, but um, yeah, but dance form as such, I mean, especially the contributions of choreographers, the dancing, I feel is so unique to us. But I get it. Ultimately, we all have to do what we genuinely believe in as well, because we want to come out. Authenticity is
I
the right.
think I've gotten a suggestion for like dance movies, like Adulto Pagal Hai or like the ABCD movies or anything like that. So I'm definitely open to that as well. To me, I just feel like the dance numbers and especially when it comes to actresses, something um, that I really have gotten a little frustrated with is that when it comes to appreciating our actresses, I feel like there's really not focus on acting or how they build character, more so just how pretty they look or how well they dance or how, God forbid, like the Stan Wars, which drives me crazy. So
Oh
I'm
my
just
God.
like,
Okay.
that's why I wanted to do that Filmfare Best Actress draft because I was like, you know what, these actresses had been in such amazing movies and have really contributed such brilliant performances. That I wanted to honor that rather than just be like a Stan account that just posts clips of the same dance numbers over and over again.
No, no,
You know
I
what I
get
mean?
it. But
So, yeah.
yeah, humble rebuttal to that would be is that dancing is also a performative form. I mean, I'm not talking about like post 2000s where Farah Khan is just I won't get into what she damage she's done to choreography and good things as well. But like say someone
Yeah.
like Saroj Khan or before that, the face. I mean, just imagine a Hava Hawaii without Sri Devi's face. She's using her all facial expressions, facial muscles to perform, and it's part of the performance. I feel
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
But that's a whole different
No, I totally
conversation.
agree. I
That's a
totally
whole
agree.
different podcast
Yeah.
on that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, are you ready to play a bit of fun? So, it's inspired from Coffee with
Yeah, of
Karan.
course.
So, we've got 10 questions only, 10 rapid fire questions. We call it the Furious 10. I don't know why there's a fly here. And then, no time to think, same rules, you know the drill. So, tell me when you're ready and we'll get started.
I am ready.
Okay. If you were not doing podcasting, what else would you be doing?
I would be more of a writer, I think.
Okay. If you had to invite three dinner party guests, dead or alive, which ones would they be?
Yash Chopra for sure. Um, uh, Christopher Nolan, um, and let's say Mir Nair.
Okay. Your top three celebrity crushes in Hindi
Um,
cinema.
in Hindi cinema,
Yes.
okay. Ranveer Singh for sure. Um, Gosh, who else? This is kind of embarrassing, but Sanjeev Kumar.
Ooh, we'll have to do
He's
a
the
whole deep
Thakur
dive
in
into that.
Sholay.
Yeah.
I think he's like so like I love that. Okay, so Sholay, of course, it's a movie that needs no introduction for anyone that watches Indian movies. But my favorite character in Sholay is Thakur. I love Thakur, and I love his shawl. I love his just like his whole vibe. I don't know. I think Sanjeev Kumar is so handsome. I think he's such a sweet, strong actor. I love his character in Silsila. I love his character in oh god, Sita or Gita. Like I don't know. I think he's just such
He's
a
good in Angur as well, if you have. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like he's
That's
done
super very
roles
good.
in so many different types of movies. He's been the hero, the villain, the comic relief. He's one of the few actors that I feel like plays his age or
Yeah.
played even older. I think he's very sophisticated. So yeah, Sanjeev Kumar for sure. And I'll try to give someone that is not as like random. In Hindi cinema crushes. I mean, like, uh, oh God, now I'm blinking because I feel like I had the wild card already. I probably would say Siddharth Malhotra.
Okay.
I think he seems like a sweet guy. He's married to a cutie, and they're both good actors and they're cute. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm all about that.
Okay. Well, that's interesting pick. All right. So Ryan Reynolds or Ryan Gosling, pick one.
Oh, I guess Ryan Gosling.
Oh, thanks for saying that. Uh, I'm a huge Gosling fan. So, okay, Christopher Nolan or Hitchcock?
Oh boy. I think Hitchcock because I think even Christopher Nolan would say Hitchcock.
Okay,
So, and all roads lead to Hitchcock in my opinion. So you have to pick him.
Hitchcock or Yash Chopra?
Hitchcock.
Oh, okay. Your favorite? Okay, well, this is a sort of giveaway, so I'll change the question. I was going to ask your favorite Yash Chopra movie, but it's Veer Zara, so you've established that extremely
Well, I
well.
would say my favorite is probably Lumhe. Um, but
My favorite Yash Chopra movie too. I love it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, if you had from all the panelists that have been on your podcast so far, if you had to pick three panelists, any of the three who have already appeared, not whom you have on the pipeline, and you get an
Okay.
all expenses paid trip for a holiday in a first class Emirates flight to anywhere you want in the world. Which three panelists would you choose?
Oh my gosh. Okay, probably Amrita, who was on my Shah Rukh Khan and Amitabh Bachchan episodes. I feel like she would be a fun person to travel with.
Yeah.
She's very knowledgeable and very. I feel like she knows like a lot of. I think she would be good to travel with. I feel like she has a lot of good tips on like where to go and what to do
And is
and
she
like
the
where
one
to eat
from
or
the Khandan podcast?
yes, from the
Yeah.
Kandan podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I would say also Erin, who is from the Bollywood is for Lovers podcast. I mean, she and her co-host Matt and I are, we've been podcasting and friendly with each other for years. So I think I would get along with her, and I'm having her partner on a future episode, but he can come too as well. And then for the third one, I mean, I don't know. That's it's tough. I would say Ahil. Yeah, Ahil, who's been on. He was on the Sanjay Leela Bhansali draft and the famous Jewess draft. He's a nice, he's a really cool guy. I've met him in person actually, and I really like him a lot. And also, I mean, our mutual friend Silam as well. I know that's four, but I love Silam, and I would have
Oh
love
yeah,
to
he's
travel with
awesome.
him. I mean, if I ever go to his part of the world, I definitely want to see him.
Absolutely. Now, the next question is, so you are with these three or four people whom you've picked to go with, and you're on the flight, and you're going to wherever, and the flight is about to crash, and you only have two parachutes. So you one is for yourself, and the other one you can save one of those other
Oh
guests that
no, I
you've
don't want to do
mentioned.
that.
So who would you
I
choose?
would
Oh, it's a game.
give,
You have to do it. Come on.
I have to choose. I would say, I don't know. My first instinct is to say Ahil, only because I've met him in person. So I
Okay,
feel like, and you know, I don't know. That's just the first thing that came to my mind, but I feel
that's
terrible
fair.
about
You know,
that.
Amrita and Aaron can say goodbyes to,
Yeah.
Joey. All right. And the last question, if a biopic was to be made on your life, which
Okay.
actor from Hindi cinema would you like to play your role?
Well, I guess looks wise, my parents and my sisters have told me that Abhishek Bachchan and I look similar.
Okay.
Especially this is like back in his like when he was kind of like baby faced. But acting wise, I mean, I think he's a great actor, but I think that I don't know. I want to have someone very like you know distinguished, but also someone that's very like chameleon like. Can I say Irfan Khan? I
You can
mean,
say whoever you
he's no
want
longer
to.
with us,
Yeah.
but I would say Irfan Khan. It would be an honor if he played me.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, he's the greatest, one of the greatest actors on planet Earth ever, I think, anyway. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So he's fantastic.
absolutely.
All right, now we are about to wrap up, but before we wrap up, we ask all our guests two questions. One is, what is your anthem song?
My anthem song. Yeah, see, I'm not a music person, so
I
like I
know,
don't
right?
have like a song, you know. I would say probably um oh gosh. Probably a song from like I'll go with Mega de Mega from Lamhe, just since we were talking about Lamhe. I mean, I feel like I did not really emphasize enough how much I love Lamhe, but that to me that's a perfect movie, and I think Mega de Mega is such a lovely song, and
So,
it's full of longing, and it has one of my favorite like musical moments, which is when in the second verse, she has that line and she kind of slips it in Odeya in
mm,
there. Um, and it's such a like wonderful song. And, you know, Sri Devi is just like beautiful. It's in the rain. Yes, that'd be my anthem song.
You have to come back and do another episode where we do a deep dive into Lamhe because Lamhe is the movie
I
I
would love
love
that,
the
honestly.
most. Like that's the movie that's the reason I fell in love with movies. So it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And second question, what's the one thing you, because we normally ask everyone what's the one thing you love about Melbourne, but since you're not in
yeah.
Australia, what's the one thing you love about New York or Brooklyn, where you are from, where you're based?
Um, I would say like just walking in the city, no matter if I mean, there are parts of the city you don't want to be walking in, but for the most part, like if you're walking in the city, there's just so much going on, and so people around, especially this time of year. I mean, for us, it's kind of like fall, so it's getting colder. Leaves are on the ground, and but it's like still kind of sunny and warm. It has this like that kind of a autumnal feel, and yeah, it's just I just love to walk in the city and people watch and look at the buildings and go into a cafe or go into a restaurant or a bar and just kind of chill out. That's sort of the main thing for me.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you, Manish, for doing this podcast. I appreciate it. So from one Desi guy with an MBA who does podcasting to another Desi guy with an MBA who does podcasting. Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
everything that you do. Congratulations on your podcast. Congratulations on all your achievements. I think it's wonderful, and I wish you
Thank
all
you.
the best for everything that you do next. And yeah, and come back anytime you want. And we will. I hope more people in Australia who listen to this podcast and who love Hindi cinema go and listen to Manish's podcast. I'll obviously plug all of your links and stuff when this episode drops. So thank you so much, Manish. Appreciate you doing
Thank
this.
you. Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, I love your podcast. And so you have such wonderful, interesting guests. So I appreciate the invitation as well.
No, absolutely, anytime. Now, before you go, do you mind if we take a quick selfie? I don't know how I figure this out. Thank you so much for listening to the episode and hanging out with us. We really, really appreciate it. And while you are here, can I humbly request that you please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our Spotify channel. We are also available on Apple and Amazon Music. So if you are there, subscribe to us as well. And you can follow me on Let's Talk Bulb on Instagram. And looking forward to hanging out with you again next week. Take care and enjoy.